My name is Julie Rodewald, and I am the Voter Services Director for the League of Women Voters of San Luis Obispo County. I would like to welcome you to today's presentation of Lunch with the League. Lunch with the League is a program of the League of Women Voters of San Luis Obispo County that presents topics of interest to the community. And today our topic is redistricting in California, why it matters. And we are fortunate to have as our special guest Commissioner Neal Fornaciari, one of the citizens appointed to the Citizens Redistricting Commission for the state of California. After the commissioner's presentation, there will be a moderated question and answer period. And to submit questions, simply type them into the Q&A. So now as an introduction, Neal worked as a researcher and manager at Sandia National Laboratories in Livermore for 27 years prior to retiring in 2017. He has experience leading and coaching people, managing change, managing projects, and leading research and development programs. After retiring, he spent a year as foreperson of the 2018-19 San Joaquin County Grand Jury. He holds a BS and MS in mechanical engineering and an MBA, all from the University of California at Berkeley. He resides in Tracy and is registered with the Republican Party. Neal, the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you, Julie, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting me to have this conversation with you all today. Just a little bit more about myself. I'm a native Californian. I was born in Livermore. I grew up in Pleasanton. I didn't go very far, and then I spent the last 30 years in Tracy with my wife, Kate, and we have one son, Theodore. We call him Theo, and we have a dog named Coach. And so in my spare time, I am retired, but in my spare time, I do a lot of woodworking, fixing stuff up around the house, of course, and then I restored an old classic car. So it's kind of a little bit about me. But I did want to talk a little bit about why I joined the commission and why I found it so compelling. So I did serve on the civil grand jury as foreperson, and that was really my first kind of foray into government into participating, giving back, as a citizen. And it was a very, very interesting and compelling experience. I learned a lot about county and local government, how they work. And when I finished that up, I was looking for an opportunity to continue to give back. And, I heard about ads on the radio about the commission. And for me, fairness is important, really important. And, I live in San Joaquin County, which is in the Central Valley. I live just south of Stockton. And after the 2000 census, basically the House members in California got together and decided to draw their own districts, and so that they could continue to be reelected in perpetuity. And so my district started in San Joaquin County and snaked through the uninhabited hills to eastern Alameda, southern Contra Costa, and then it snaked through more uninhabited hills down to southern Santa Clara County. And it's just like, what? I mean, what is this, the people in this district have in common other than political affiliation so we can reelect our representative? It really rubbed me the wrong way. Fundamentally, I believe that voters should choose their representatives, not the other way around. And so this idea of an independent redistricting commission, I found it really compelling. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. If I can find the right one. And Julie, can you all see that okay? Okay, very good. So I have, 20 minutes or so of some slides. I'll be talking about the commission, what the commission's all about, what we do, and how you all can get involved in the process. But for the first thing I want to say is Government Code Section 2353A.3 says that individual commissioners cannot take input on redistricting matters. Input on redistricting matters has to be taken during a public hearing. So, while, maybe some of you want to tell me why your district is bad or what your new district should look like, I would ask you to hold that input until we have our public input meetings, or I'll tell you how to provide that input later on in the presentation. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have about redistricting and about the commission. So what is redistricting? It's basically, simply put, it's drawing new district boundaries that determine which Californians are represented in which electoral district. So why do we redraw district maps? Why do we do redistricting? Well, the new census comes out every 10 years, and a lot changes in 10 years. Communities change, priorities, interests, goals, makeup of communities change. People are born, people die, people move into and out of, and also within California. We have a huge migration, COVID migration going on right now in California. It's actually not going to be reflected on the census, but it will be reflected next time. And all these changes cause communities to grow and shrink, and areas that were once roughly equal in population become unequal. And so these are some of the reasons that districts need to be redrawn. So your voice, and why is redistricting important? And one of the greatest powers that the people of California have is to elect their own representatives to conduct the business of their government. How the district boundaries are configured and can make the difference between empowering and maximizing voters' voices, or minimizing and muting those voices. In most other states, politicians redraw districts and often end up drawing safe districts for themselves that allow those politicians to stay in office. Redistricting has been used at times to exclude communities from political power. By fully participating in and monitoring the upcoming redistricting process, more communities may have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Speaking up about your community is critical in keeping your community whole. This ensures your voice is heard by your elected leaders when making decisions such as funding your child's education or determining your tax rates. Your input is valuable in shaping these new political boundaries. Oops. So how redistricting affects you? We thought it'd be beneficial for us to break this down. So first of all, power of the people. The Voters First Act was historic in California. It transferred the power of drawing district maps away from the politicians and gave it to the people. Champion your issues. Having the opportunity to elect representatives that champion your issues is important in a state like California, where issues can vary drastically from one region to the next. For instance, Northern California might champion environmental or economic issues. Central California might champion agricultural and water issues, and Southern California might champion transportation and housing issues. Funding. Tied to the issue of electing representatives that champion your concerns, you might want to elect representatives that have your financial interests at heart too. When it comes time to build a budget, you'll want representatives fighting to ensure your community gets the financial resources it deserves for various services such as education, water, and fire protection. And I apologize. Oh my gosh. I apologize. Can you hear me? Okay, the leaf blower just decided to show up right now. I am so sorry. Okay, where was I? All right, let me have a drink of water. Community boundaries. The redistricting process is all about drawing lines and determining which communities get grouped into districts. Your input in this process is essential to help commissioners understand where your community begins and ends. Redistricting is one of the few civic activities that any Californian can participate in by providing input that ultimately impacts laws, regulations, tax structure, how funding is distributed, and which services are provided. So the road to fair representation. The US Constitution requires that every American receive as close to equal representation as possible. As populations of districts change over time, it could leave some districts overrepresented and others underrepresented in government. And redistricting evens out the population between districts. So every 10 years after the federal government publishes updated census information, California must redraw the boundaries of its congressional, state senate, state assembly, and state board of equalization districts so that these districts correctly reflect the state's population. At the federal level, reapportionment takes place to reallocate House seats among the states. That data just came out, 2 days ago. And California is going to lose a seat. We're going from 53 congressional representatives down to 52. And then historically, politicians have drawn maps that allowed them to choose their voters rather than enabling voters to choose their representatives. This former system undermined the concept of fair representation, which is to give the people the power to choose their representatives. Oops. Yeah. So we've talked about how redistricting affects you, and now we'll explain why independent redistricting matters. Democracy depends on voters having the opportunity to choose their representatives. When elected officials redraw the lines of their own districts, they get to choose their voters. This slide highlights some key terms in redistricting to help you understand why it's important to delegate the power of redistricting to the people. Gerrymandering happens when the election boundaries are drawn in a way that gives a particular set of people, like a political party or racial group, an unfair political advantage over another. This graph shows how in a jurisdiction with 50 people, 60% orange and 40% purple, 5 districts can be drawn in multiple ways. The first 2 examples show ways to draw district lines in a fair manner, where the districts are drawn to reflect the proportionality of population. The 2 examples on the far right show ways to draw district maps in a manner that does not reflect the population fairly, which is referred to as gerrymandering. This is why independent commissions, like California's commission, were created to remove the politics from the process and focus on the people. Oops. This is my first time doing this solo, so I apologize. I'm getting a little messed up here sometimes. Okay, so the criteria. So there are 6 criteria that the commission has to follow in order when drawing maps. The first criteria we have to consider is the districts must be of nearly equal population to comply with the US Constitution. The second criteria is we must comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. The third is contiguity. Districts must be drawn so that all parts of the district are connected to each other, unless, of course, there are islands, and we include those islands in districts that are nearby on the mainland. So districts must minimize the division of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. Districts should also be geographically compact. And compact is not, it sounds like it's about shape, but it's more about not bypassing areas of population, of nearby population, to select of an area of population further away. And then finally, nesting. And so, there are 80 assembly districts, 40 Senate districts, and 10 Board of Equalization districts. So ideally, two whole assembly districts would be in one state Senate district, and 10 state Senate districts would be in one assembly or one Board of Equalization district. So in addition, and this is kind of a footnote, but it's really an important point, the place of residence of any incumbent or political candidate may not be considered in the creation of a map. And districts may not be drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, a political candidate, or political party. So in addition to the statewide effort that the California Citizens Redistricting Commission is responsible for, there are a number of other redistricting efforts taking place in the state at the same time. You know, throughout the 58 counties, many of those counties are doing redistricting for their Board of Supervisors seats, for instance. Cities may be doing them for their city council seats. And then we have school districts, water districts, community college districts. Many other districts are doing redistricting all at once. So in addition to becoming involved in our process, or inviting you to be involved in our process, we'd also ask everyone to consider engaging in your local redistricting processes also. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the history of the commission. So, you know, prior to 2010, legislatures in California drew the districts. And if the legislature failed to properly draw the lines, the court drew the lines or appointed a special master to draw the lines. In 2008, California voters passed Prop 11, the Voters First Act, creating the Citizens Redistricting Commission to draw the lines for state Senate, state Assembly, and state Board of Equalization. And then in 2010, Prop 20, the Voters First Act for Congress, added the responsibility of drawing congressional districts to the commission. So, you know, other states are getting on board. It's my understanding that Arizona was the first state to have an independent commission, but in addition to Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, and Washington also have independent commissions. And then I think it's HR 1 is considering requiring that for all states for congressional representatives. So then I want to talk a little bit about the process for becoming a commissioner. So the selection process is run by the state auditor. You know, they're an independent organization. They appoint 3 auditors to run the process. 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, and 1 person not registered with either of those parties. And that theme is going to, that theme of the 3 different groups is going to run through the whole process here. So there was a preliminary application process where there were 20,000 applicants in 2019. After an initial review and cutting some of those applicants, a little over 2,000 individuals completed a more rigorous application process. Those 3 auditors reviewed all 2,000 plus of those applications and narrowed it down to 120 applicants for interviews, 40 Democrats, 40 Republicans, and 40 from neither of those 2 parties. After the interviews, 60 were chosen, 20 from each group, that were submitted to the legislature. So each of the members of the leadership of the Senate and the Assembly from both parties were given 6 strikes each, 2 from each group, for a total of 24 strikes. So the legislature returned to the auditor 36 names, 12 in each pool. And they literally put the names on a piece of paper with a number and put ping pong balls in a little hopper and drew names out. And I was number 9 in the Republican pool. And so, you know, I don't know if it was a curse or a blessing, but I was chosen. This has been a challenge. This COVID has made this a challenge, but anyway, this has been a great experience. So I was chosen as one of the first 8. And then we got together and chose the next 6. So you might be wondering why not just randomly draw all 14. Well, one reason that was foreseen by the drafters of this initiative were there were 0 Latino representatives in the first 8, and Latinos make up 40% of the population of the state. So in order to get a diverse a representative commission, we added 4 of the next 6. We chose Latino candidates. The intent is to keep it as balanced as possible. And so, who are the commissioners? There's 14 of us, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 neither. The 4 are all no party preference. And I think we have a pretty diverse pool here. 7 are from Northern California, 7 are from Southern California, roughly. There are 8 women, there are 6 men. We range in age from the 30s to the 60s. There are NGO leaders, engineers, pastors, law enforcement officers, political scientists, a lawyer, and public servants. So, I think we're fairly representative of the state, as representative as 14 people can be. So what are our duties? We're kind of undertaking 3 phases of this process. The first phase we're in right now is the education phase, where we're going out, we're engaging the people of California with these redistricting basics presentations. We have a lot of other literature on our website about redistricting. We have a strong social network, social media presence, and email presence, and we're just trying to get out there and engage. The next stage is to collect public input, communities of interest input, and we're transitioning into that phase right now, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And then we draw maps. As I mentioned before, this slide is not up to date. It says approximately 53 congressional districts, and we'll have 52 next time. But this gives you a kind of an example around Sacramento of what the different districts are and what they look like. So what we've done in order to help us facilitate engagement with the state throughout the state is we've developed these outreach zones. There are 11 outreach zones, and you can see on the left who the commissioners are that are responsible for those outreach zones. I'm leading Zone E, which is Monterey, San Benito, San Luis Obispo. I don't know why there's a comma there. We'll have to get that fixed. Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, and Ventura counties. So I've been reaching out to those counties and along with Commissioner Kennedy to engage. And so I want to take a minute to talk a little bit more about communities of interest and what are communities of interest. So as I mentioned, criteria 4 is respect for communities. So we try not to break up cities, counties, neighborhoods as best we can when we're drawing maps. And one of the big drivers or one of the guideposts we use is our communities of interest, and we want to understand what binds people together in communities and try to honor those. So communities of interest are defined as a concentrated population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. Examples include areas in which the people share similar living standards, have similar cultures, use the same transportation facilities, have similar work opportunities, or have access to the same media. People belong to multiple communities of interest. So keep in mind that communities of interest are not the same as a district, but communities of interest are key building blocks for districts. Some ways to draw your community, geographically, waterways, urban, rural, mountains, boundaries, cities, towns, counties, school area, roads are often boundaries, and things you have in common. So for instance, for me, Tracy is really when I moved here, it was very rural and agricultural, and it's become a bedroom community for the Silicon Valley and the Bay Area. So transportation is a big concern for this community. Agriculture is still a big concern for this community. For me personally, I live in an area where we have a special district providing water and sewer services that isn't going well. So my representation for that is important to me personally. So those are some examples of communities of interest. So how do you define your community of interest? Communities of interest can be described by creating maps and telling us about your community. While there are no clear rules on how to define a community of interest, the following are basic elements to help you define your communities. Oral testimony, personal stories are powerful. Share examples of things members of your community have in common and what makes your community unique. Imagine describing your community to a visitor out of town. Does your neighborhood share certain celebrations or traditions, like street festivals or parades? Are there important places where your community gathers, like parks or community centers? What is the history of how your community came together? This can be done. You can provide oral testimony at commission meetings or hearings, and we're working on planning the schedule for those right now. Written testimony, a written description can be used to tell your community's story, describe what connects the people and why it's important they be kept together during redistricting. Whenever possible, include statistics to support your testimonies, including data on ethnicity, religious groups, education levels, graduation rates, household income, poverty levels, access to technology, home ownership rates, language isolation, voter registration rates, etc. And consider using sources like the Census Bureau. And then community issues. Communities often get involved in redistricting because they feel their issues have not been adequately represented, adequately addressed by their elected representatives. Highlighting community issues in personal stories and written narratives help demonstrate the importance of having elected officials who understand and respond to community needs. As your community come together to advocate for services, better schools, roads, or health centers in your neighborhood? Boundary maps. So create a map of your neighborhood area. Mark the street names and significant locations. You can include significant landmarks and gathering places, include social service agencies, community centers, shopping districts, schools, and religious places. It may be helpful to have or create a name for your community area to be a reminder about what makes your community unique. And we have an online tool that anyone can use to provide input, and we're developing a paper tool where people can write their narrative and draw a map, and it's already postage paid, and we'll be distributing those over the next few months. So participation in the process, again, it just kind of captures what I was talking about with communities of interest. Describe your community, draw your community on a map, and either send your testimony or bring it in person to the commission. You can provide your input today with our community of interest, online community of interest tool, drawmycacommunity.org. And I'll have this information again at the end. So these are all the different ways you can provide public input. Again, the community's interest mapping tool, drawmycacommunity.org. And again, we'll have a paper form of that soon. You can go to our website, wedrawthelineca.org, and click on the Draw My CA Community icon to get to the tool. But also you can just poke around in our website. That's where our live streams are for our meetings. And so if you're interested in joining into our meetings, you'll find out the schedule and the live stream there. Voters First Act at crc.gov is our email address, phone number, and mailing address. And again, all that information is on our homepage, wedrawthelineca.org. And the community of interest tool is available in a number of languages besides English. So we want to make that as accessible as possible to the people of California. And then, so speaking of language access, we've translated our fact sheet, our flyer, FAQs, and this presentation into a number of languages, 12 languages so far. We're offering interpretation of public comment at our business meeting, provided there's an advance notice. Written public input can be sent to the CRC in any format, and we will translate it. We'll translate non-English language inputs from the community of interest tool into English. And if an interpreter is needed, during our input meetings, we request a 5 days notice, but we will provide an interpreter. So as I mentioned to Julie, we were having a meeting, a discussion at our meeting that's going on right now about schedule. And things are running late because of COVID. In anticipation of the census data being late, the legislature sued the Secretary of State to go to the Supreme Court and get the commission some relief on the deadline. Our statutory deadline for delivering maps to the Secretary of State is August 15th. And we're scheduled to get the legacy census data at the latest August 16th. So we were given a relief from the Supreme Court based on an expected delivery date of the census, that we should have our maps done by December 15th, and that they've also given us the latitude to extend that deadline on a day-per-day basis as the census data is later than expected. So we have this timeline, which is not really accurate anymore. But again, we're out doing these education presentations now. It says June through August for our public input meetings. Those will be our formal public input meetings, but you can put your public input in now through the COI tool. And again, around the middle of August is when census data is expected to the state, but the statewide database has to do some massaging to that data. And so the commission doesn't expect to get it until the end of September or the beginning of October. And then October, December timeframe will be drawing draft maps, and getting feedback on those and iterating through that process. And December, January kind of timeframe is about what we're looking at for delivery of final maps. But again, we're working through that timeline right now. Just a reminder, please no public input at this conversation, but we welcome your public input at our meetings, at our input hearings that we'll be holding and then through the tool. And then finally, again, contact information. We're all over social media at We Draw the Lines CA. And you can contact the commission also. You can contact our outreach, our director of outreach, marcy.kaplan@crc.ca.gov. So that's all I have right now. So I'll stop sharing my screen and we'll go to questions.
Sorry, I wasn't ready for that. So there's a couple of questions that have come in, and I'm going to try and group them.
Okay.
First of all, there are a couple of questions about the commission itself, which we'll take those first and then get into
Okay.
the work of the commission.
Sure.
The first question is, do you have a staff? And you just gave us one of your staff's contacts, but what does your staff consist of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now we have executive director. We have our outreach director was our outreach manager. Our executive director was our outreach director. We had a change in leadership and we promoted him and then we promoted her. And so we have lots and lots of openings at this point when we're fully staffed. And then we have some back office staff that do, accounting and finance person, an office manager. As far as outreach staff, we need a new outreach manager or another one of our outreach staff just left to take a job in San Luis Obispo County. Today was her last day, unfortunately.
Oh.
And so we've got 10 openings on our outreach staff that we're really scrambling to fill. We also have an opening for our chief counsel, and we just finished interviews for those this week. We've identified a candidate. We hope to have them on in the next few weeks, but we do have an interim chief counsel. So one of the challenges that this commission faces is, and it's really going to be a lesson learned that we're going to focus on for next time, is that, the commission is put together in July and August of the years ending in 0, and basically has no staff and has to completely staff up and hit the ground running in order to meet the deadline of August 15th to finish their work. In addition to that, to do all that outreach and education work, and do the map drawing. And so, in order to be more effective, there needs to be staff already there to help the next commission get rolling more effectively.
Great. Another question about the commission is California recognizes 6 official political parties: American Independent, Democratic, Green, Libertarian, Peace and Freedom, and Republican, as well as no party preference. What was the criteria to just select Democrat and Republican and no party preference for the commissioners? And I know that this came out of the Voters First Act, but was there any discussion to include other of the what we call minor political parties?
Right. So I'll just answer the bigger picture question here. So the way the legislation is written is that the commission will have 5 members from the largest political party in California, 5 members from the second largest political party in the state, and 4 members from parties other than those 2 parties. Something, I'm paraphrasing that part, but and so as for the no, for why did we wind up with 4 no party preference as opposed to Green Party or the other recognized party? And so, the answer is we had the pool that we had was the pool that we had. And I'll tell you off the top of my head, I don't recall what the party distribution was in the in the pool of others. So I should have a better answer to that question, but I don't recall what the pool was. I mean, we chose the two people we chose to balance out the distribution in the distribution across ethnic and racial, geographic location. I mean, that's what we were looking at, and so that's where we wound up with the two folks that we chose of the 8. As far as the first 2 of the folks in that pool, it was random draw.
Okay, thanks. So there's a couple more questions about the commissioner, and then there are some questions about county processes, which I'm not sure you can answer, but we'll try after we get to the commission.
Okay.
So given that the purpose of the nonpartisan commission or the independent commission was to lessen the partisan nature of redistricting, are the commissioners even aware of or provided with partisan population data? Can we be confident that commissioners avoid seeking or looking at partisan data or political party affiliation of the population?
So let's see. So the census data does not have partisan information in it. And so the census data is the main data set that we use to conduct our work and draw the district. However, in order to comply with the Voting Rights Act, we have to a racially polarized voting analysis has to be done. And that analysis is done by a contractor that we hire. And that contractor will look at voting data and to see if there is a preference, a candidate preference by minority groups, such that they have such that combining those minority groups into a district would enable them to elect the candidate of their choice. So that does look at partisan data, but a consultant does that for us and gives us the results. So I mean, we haven't done it, but I don't believe the commissioners themselves dig into the partisan data at all. We just get the results of that analysis.
Okay. So prior to the commission, the most bipartisan aspect of redistricting was protecting incumbents. How does the commission avoid considering where incumbents are from and deliberately putting them at an advantage or disadvantage?
So it's in the statute that we're not allowed to consider an incumbent's address. So we don't even know that information.
Okay. And then a kind of a different take on that question is you had mentioned that you can't take into account where an incumbent lives. And the question was, does an elected official not need to live in the area they are elected to serve? If not, why not? And my understanding is that Assembly and Senate Board of Equalization, those candidates need to live within the district that they're being elected to serve. I'm not positive about the congressional representatives, but
I think that they do too.
Okay.
I believe so, because there was an example last time when the 2011 commission finished that two sitting congresspersons wound up in the same district, living in the same district, and they ran against each other. So I believe, you have to live in the district that you're representing.
So all the candidates have to live in their districts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me just see. Were there any lessons learned from the 2011 Citizen Redistricting Commission that the current CRC is considering?
Yeah, a lot. Their executive director wrote a 70-page summary of their experience and lessons learned. And the commission itself wrote a lengthy document that we have just talking about the process and the lessons learned. So
That's,
yeah, a lot.
yeah.
So I can't think of any particular examples off the top of my head, but we definitely listened to, what their experience has been. We've had a few commissioners come in and former commissioners come in and speak with us. And we've had a number of them call in and provide public comment in our meetings.
That's great. If it's only done every 10 years, you need to have some information to start off with.
Right.
Regarding timeline, and you talked about this a little bit, how or can this change the primary election date that's slated for June 7th, 2022?
Yeah.
And regarding independent redistricting, this is for state district lines only, not San Luis County districts.
Correct. Right. Where our commission is only looking at statewide offices.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's what we're really struggling with is we are so if the data comes in, if we get the data in at the end of the beginning of October, if we take 3.5 months to draw the lines or so, we're looking at the end of December, which is already overlapping the signature and lieu period for candidates. If we go much into January, it's really going to crash into the time that the county registrars need to precinct. I mean, seriously crash into their time to precinct. And so, a subcommittee of the commission has been meeting with the legislature, with representatives of the county registrars, with other citizens groups to, talk about when, how can we kind of share the pain and come up with a compromise schedule that, will enable the election to either be held when it's scheduled or push back only a little bit. But pushing back an election is a really big deal. And so, we're doing our best to try to come up with creative ways to, come up with a timeline that will work for everyone. But it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I was the former registrar for 20 years, and I'm very happy. I'm no longer the registrar, although I know that our current registrar is on this webinar today. It's a huge challenge of everything that's going on. So there are a couple of questions about county process. And one of them is, do local redistricting efforts have to abide by the equitable and other fair points required by the state redistricting regulations? And I don't know if you feel that you can answer those questions, but I thought I'd pose it to you.
I don't know, but I assume as far as like equal population requirement, I would assume they have to. I didn't go into the details of that, but I will. For Congress, it has to be as equal as possible. And the last commission, I think, did plus or minus one person in their congressional district. And for state Senate, State Assembly, Board of Equalization, there's more latitude there. It's a few. I think it can be as far as plus or minus 5% with some justification if you're getting that big of a deviation. But I assume that applies. That requirement applies. I don't know what the latitude is there, but it's got to be roughly equal, I would assume.
Yeah. I think in seeing the presentations to our Board of Supervisors, they have to follow state law, the Voting Rights Act, and they're looking at, I think, about less than a 4% population deviation.
That sounds about right.
The big difference is we don't have an independent commission. It's being done by the supervisors themselves, which leads to another question about, that the county supervisors make that decision, which raises the obviously obvious conflict of interest questions. That would be, less temptation toward accommodating incumbents would be to have the independent commission. Are you aware of other California counties that use independent commissions?
Well, I know San Diego County has an independent commission because one of our commissioners and one of the commissioners on the San Diego County Commission had a webinar about redistricting and talked about the similarities and the differences. And that, boy, it might have been the League of Women Voters of San Diego who.
It might have been, yeah.
I think it was actually, and that I believe that is actually posted on our website. But I can get you that information if you'd like. Sure.
No, that's fine. I've been looking at the different
Okay.
presentations. I didn't see that one on your website, but I can go
Okay.
to the website.
Okay.
And then there was another question. Oh, kind of a follow-up to that is, this would be more of, in your opinion, do you think it's too late, or would it be possible to institute an independent commission for the work this year at the county level? I mean, you talked about, it's been almost a year process for your commission to get up and running.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be tough. It would be tough. Although, I think that the scale of it, the smaller scale makes it a bit easier. I mean, the idea is, you're definitely, if you have a county commission, you definitely want, or if not, right, you definitely want opportunity for public input and public hearings. And getting all that process up and running would be a challenge in this time frame. Although, there is, the data won't be out until about October 1st, probably. So it's a number of months to get the commission stood up. I don't know if the county's already contracted with a demographer to help draw lines or not, but that's another process.
Yeah, I think that they just approved a contract last week or the week before to do that. And then there was a question, do you work with the Rose Institute of State and Local Government at Claremont McKenna College?
So we don't work with them, although we've invited them in for at least one presentation, if not a couple, and they provided some input and information for us. Great.
And then there was a question that was a little bit specific to the last redistricting. And I remember this well, because I was there. There's a census block was split at the south end of San Luis Obispo County. So we're actually in two different, I believe, assembly districts, but there's nobody living in the one assembly district. So will there be an opportunity to change that and kind of maybe, going back to that, will you look at those kinds of things that need fixing? Do you start all over again, or do you just kind of tweak the lines that are there? And then as it relates to Congress, how has that complicated your work that we're losing a seat?
Right. So first thing, I think that's a good opportunity for public input, for folks to bring forward to the commission. We don't like, the fact that the census block got split, in the county. So the question, are we going to start with the existing maps and tweak them, or are we going to start from scratch? We haven't decided that yet. We've talked about it. We know we need to make that decision, but we haven't gotten there yet. And as far as Congress goes, Neal's opinion, I guess we get to start, from a blank slate, right? I mean, it's not like we can just pick a district out and take it out, We've got to draw 52 districts now instead of 53. So I don't know how you do that other than starting from scratch. You know, and I will say we had a presentation yesterday from the Public Policy Institute of California, looking at population shifts in the state and which areas have grown more, which areas have shrunk, and there's significant shift in the state, and so you know. I don't know what, you know, we're going to look into this in more detail, but because there's such a significant shift in population, not clear exactly how you would use last time's districts as a starting point, because there's going to be some dramatically different population centers, I think.
Yeah.
But we'll find out, right? I mean, we'll find out when we get there.
Right. Yeah, so we have about 5 minutes left. I do have a question for you about the prison population. I understand that this year that the prison population will be removed from the counties in which they're housed and put into the population for the counties from which they were sentenced. I believe that that's a change this year. Was that something that the commission was involved in making that change, or was that mandated to make that change?
So the state mandated that for all offices, or the legislature, you know, passed the requirement for all, you know, county and local offices for the data that they use. They required that okay, sorry, let me step back. Statewide database is responsible for providing the redistricting data. They instructed the statewide database to reallocate the prisoner population from state prisons back to their address of record. And if they can't find the address, somewhere in the county. And required that the county and city and other districts who are doing redistricting use that data. They requested that we use it because they can't tell us to use it because we're an independent commission. But we voted to use the reallocated data. And so we're going to be using the data with the reallocated prisoners. There is still a question about federal prisoners and how those are being handled. I believe the state has instructed the statewide database not to count them for the redistricting data used for cities and counties. But as a commission, we're still figuring out how we want to manage that.
Yeah, it's an interesting change. So, but we just have like maybe not even a minute, and we need to get a last screen up. So I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I'm sorry that we took you away from your meeting, but you didn't know you were having a meeting today, right?
Right. I didn't know. So probably got me out of a couple of subcommittee reports.
There
Anyway,
you
so
go. Yeah,
cool.
I hope you didn't get appointed to something because you.
Oh
you
my
were
gosh,
present.
they probably appointed me to some new subcommittee. Yeah, shoot.
Definitely. So thank you so much for joining us, Commissioner Fornaciari, right? Fornaciari.
Yeah,
Close enough.
close enough. Absolutely.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll be able to encourage all of our citizens to get involved and get input into your process.
Yeah, that'd be great. And thank you all for your time. I appreciate, we appreciate it. So take care.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
And we're going to put up some more information here. There we go. And so you can email us with questions. You can send questions to Neal, and then you'll also be sent a short survey. So we hope that you will complete that and get back to us. And thank you so much for participating with us today.